Ryan Floyd, Attorney General Chris Kobach wanted you to meet. Been on the opposite side of some litigation that resolved this year, and really wanted to thank you, General Kobach, for coming down and kind of seeing this human side of some of the experiences of the COVID shutdowns.
So opposite side of the litigation, but same side of the struggle against government overreach. That's for sure.
Yeah. So Ryan, I don't know if you want to share kind of how you experienced the first months of COVID regarding the shutdowns and how it affected, especially your business as a gym.
Yeah. So basically, we were just at the beck and call of the governor. What it was, all right, you can operate here, you can't, you need to operate this way. Train in place when we were able to get back to, can you imagine what was it? You had a 6x6 square that you had to stay in to work out in. So we were waiting for what happens. We're shut down. We had like 3 days to figure it out. Fortunately, in the digital world, we did our best to try to go digital and help people that through Zoom, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, it was a lot of uncertainty. And in the fitness world, uncertainty is not good.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know that instructors are going to be there. They want to know that we are there to take care of them. So it was all hands on deck, and we were working our tails off to try to maintain any sort of business.
And your business is based on classes, right?
Correct.
So you don't have a bunch of individual, no weight machines. It's not like people come in here and just go work out by themselves. So
No.
this business couldn't really thrive on one individual coming in at a particular time.
No, yeah, and so that was the struggle when we did finally get open back up, was the train in place, and no one liked that. They were like they didn't like that they had to stay in one spot. They didn't like that they had limited equipment. They didn't like that they had to wear a mask.
It's ridiculous.
Now, that is what it is.
But ultimately, were there any costs that you feel like you faced that other business owners didn't face during the shutdown period?
Well, we had to reinvent our business model. We had to buy all new media equipment so we could stream things for people. We had to buy it for every single one of our coaches because they had to do it out of their own house. So set up the ability to live Zoom with fitness equipment, backgrounds, cameras, computers in every single person's home, while there was nothing to buy. What was it? The cameras on top of your
Zoom webcams.
Your webcams, yes.
Yeah.
Your webcams, they were sold out. Yes, they were all sold out during COVID because everyone needed them.
Right.
Shut down for longer than other businesses.
Yes. So some businesses did not get shut down. We were shut down for 2 months, almost to the day, and so we just had to like I said, completely reinvent ourselves with that. So,
and General, you did work during COVID on similar issues, just regarding the balance between police power, emergency powers, and civil defense. What were your observations?
Well, I mean, in the biggest case that I worked on during COVID was representing members of the Air Force, and these airmen objected to taking the vaccine on religious grounds, and they had absolutely a federal statutory right and a First Amendment right to do so. But the U.S. Department of Defense, under the leadership of President Biden and Lloyd Austin, basically said, "Too bad. You have to take this vaccine." Yes, we have, in theory, on paper, we have a waiver process where you can assert a religious exemption request, but in practice, they were granting they were in fact granting 0 requests, although they were pretending to grant some and couching them as administrative requests to people who already were leaving the military anyway. And it was just a perfect example of government irrationality. Many of our plaintiffs were pilots. I was not Attorney General yet. and many of the plaintiffs were pilots in whom the United States had invested on average $5 million training them. And here was the Secretary of Defense saying, yeah, well, if you don't take this vaccine, we're going to kick you out. And that at a time when the United States already had a 1,600 plus pilot shortage, it was just so irrational.
Yeah.
And it even gets more absurd in a couple of the cases. The pilots flew planes in which each of the two pilots had their own oxygen supply. So there's no shared air in the plane. But still, the wise Department of Defense decided that
Yeah.
they should be grounded, and then they should be kicked out of the Air Force. So COVID was probably the best, or I should say worst, example of government irrationality that we will ever see, hopefully that we will ever see in our lifetimes.
So along
Yeah.
those lines, like, can you talk a little bit about how responsive government was? Like, when you brought up some of these irrational things, you felt like you were listened to, and how did you feel in that?
No, we weren't listened to at all. You know, I was getting when we first started the lawsuit, small business owners, especially in the event venue, they were hit very, very hard. Many people had just invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, just opened up that year, and boom, shut down, couldn't stay open. They reached out to me saying like, "Hey, thank you, but what can we do? How can we help? How can we get on board? Because what we need more numbers, right? We get more numbers, hopefully we get better response. And there wasn't anything. Everything that we tried got shut down. You know, we
So
tried. Yeah.
ultimately, the litigation was stayed. Can you talk about the legislative process? And there was legislation introduced that was kind of inspired by the litigation. Can you talk about the legislative process?
Yeah. So originally, with the number of small businesses in the state of Kansas, we were shooting. You know, we wanted a $500 million lawsuit, and that's what we started at. And that way, it was divvied up. People could stay afloat. They could stay in business because some of them, a lot of them, didn't have any revenue coming in. A lot of gym owners were reaching out to me as well, like, "Hey, what are you doing? What do we need to do? How can we help with this?" And with that litigation, it just every step of the way, governor vetoed, 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 vetoed.
Yeah, so there were legislative solutions that were proposed and they were vetoed, but ultimately there was a legislative solution that actually was passed and signed by the governor. Tell us about your experience with that $50 million of funding that Department of Revenue tried to dish out.
If I have that correct, that was really just for people with a storefront, and it was they're selling products and stuff, not the service industry. The service industry didn't get a lick of that money. I didn't qualify for it. Event spaces didn't qualify for it. Other gyms didn't qualify for it. I'd say more than half of small business isn't going to qualify for it. Think of the cleaners, the cleaning companies. People during COVID, they didn't want their cleaner to come into their house to clean. Well, some of them didn't. I mean, none of those were able to get any sort of help or assistance. And
Even though the whole idea of COVID shutdowns were congregating people, so
Yes.
service industry was the one thing that was restaurants, other types of places where people congregate. General, could you talk about? You've been a law professor, you've been private practice, you've been Secretary of State, and now Attorney General. In your various experiences in law, how does the role of public interest groups and litigation groups kind of intersect with how you see the law gets shaped over time?
Well, in my private practice, between being Secretary of State and Attorney General, and after being a law professor, I've found that uh, public interest groups who litigate can often be the ones pushing the hardest and creating change and forcing governments to move in the right direction. So when I was representing those 36 airmen, members of the Air Force, I was not the Attorney General at the time. I was a private attorney working on behalf of a public interest litigation group. And oftentimes those cases are brought. You get the decision in front of or you get the case in front of a judge and hopefully get a good decision. And that decision, or just the case itself, can push government to act. And I mean, or can push government back into its
Mhm.
proper role. Because in the particular case of the COVID pandemic, you had government officials, typically executive branch officials, going way beyond their authority and using the emergency as a pretext to go way beyond their authority. Or if they weren't willfully trying to transgress the boundaries of their power, they did it anyway because they didn't know what the boundaries of their power, or they didn't care what the boundaries of their power were. And so, COVID was really, it put a spotlight on the tendency of some people in government to react to a situation by exercising authority they do not have. And I hope it will. I hope that at the end of the day, American liberty will be preserved going forward, because we will look back and say COVID was the COVID shutdown was a huge mistake, that people's liberties were violated, their property was effectively taken by shutting down their business. Hopefully going forward with legislation, some of the court decisions we got, and maybe, just maybe, a little more wisdom on the part of people in government, the next time there's a healthcare crisis of that nature or a pandemic, we won't take such liberty restricting steps.
Right.
Along those lines, both of you have actually litigated against government. Now you're
No,
Kansas
no,
Attorney
I'm in the
General,
gov-
you are the government. But can you talk a little bit about what it's like to litigate against a taxing authority that can use your tax dollars against you, and just endlessly prolong litigation, and just your impressions litigating against government?
Well, I can say this, when I litigated against the Justice Department of the Biden administration, as a private attorney during COVID, typically you'd be going against this massive Death Star known as the Justice Department, and they've got so many resources, and they've got the ability to take their time in responding to a complaint, and they just have it's the country's largest law firm, basically, and it's extraordinary going up against attorneys with those odds. That said, just because they're big doesn't mean that their arguments are any better. And we had the Constitution on our side, and so oftentimes you do see this mismatch. You walk into court, and it's just one attorney or two attorneys on your side, and the Justice Department comes rolling in with several. But at the end of the day, we were right, and they were wrong in these cases.
Is that one of the reasons it's important for there to be public interest groups, litigation groups that advance things based on principle? Ryan's story was able to be told because we had people interested in certain principles being advanced during an emergency situation. As Attorney General, you inherited a case, happened to be on the other side of
Yeah.
somebody like Ryan. You've been on attorney for people like Ryan prior to your service. Currently, do you ever find yourself kind of on the same side, so to speak, of certain public interest groups?
Yeah.
And they're actually helpful to helping you shape the laws you
Yeah,
to.
yeah, absolutely there are. So when I was in private practice working for a public interest law group, absolutely we had plaintiffs in this, for example, the plaintiffs in the COVID instance who were the airmen. These members of the Air Force didn't have, a bank account that could afford to marshal all the resources to go challenge the U.S. Department of Defense in court. But the public interest organization can provide the muscle and the financial support and the legal talent to bring these cases. So absolutely, they play a pivotal role. And now, as Attorney General, in some cases, we end up with the good guys in the public interest. I mean, there's people on both sides of every issue in public interest litigation. But in cases where, for example, I have challenged a Biden administration rule that restricts gun owners' rights to sell guns to one another, whether they be relatives or friends or whatever. And there are organizations that are pro-gun owner organizations that have gotten involved in that litigation, not directly assisting us, but they are either plaintiffs in a companion case or they are providing attorney help in some of these cases. So yeah, oftentimes these public interest groups can play a vital role on behalf of an attorney general who's fighting the good fight.
Well, thanks. I'm glad you guys got a chance to meet. I don't know if
Yeah.
you want to shake hands for the.
For the camera.
Yeah.